Tonight,
In a
you are
world
about to
before
step into a
civilization,
forgotten world,
survival is fraught
long
with
before
danger
civilization,
and uncertainty.
where every night could be your last. When people imagine
Joy
the
fills
beginning of
the air as
civilization,
the hunters
they
celebrate
often
their
picture
successful
fire
hunt,
glowing inside
a moment
ancient
of triumph.
caves, or the first
The
farmers
spoils of
planting
their
seeds
hunt
beneath
now
a warm
rot,
sun.
a grim
But
reminder
what
of
if
the
one of the
fragility of
greatest
survival.
discoveries in human history looked far
Amidst
less
the cold
impressive?
and desolation, a
What
family
if the
clings
secret
to the
that
flicker
allowed
of
people to
warmth,
survive brutal
fighting
winter
for survival.
store food for the future,
As
and
the sun
eventually
rises,
build the first
nature
permanent
awakens,
homes,
and the
came
journey
from
of life
something hidden
continues
inside
across
the
the
earth
valleys.
itself. A substance
In
so
harmony
common
with nature,
today that you
these
scatter
creatures
it over
gather
dinner
around the
without a second
life-giving
thought.
springs,
And
a
yet
peaceful
thousands of years
coexistence.
ago, it was
Hidden
more
from view,
precious than
their
comfort,
curiosity drives them
precious
to
than wealth,
observe nature's wonders
sometimes
with
more
awe.
precious than life. Because before
In a moment of
villages,
discovery,
before
the
cities,
hunter tastes
before
salt,
kings,
unveiling
before
nature's
roads
hidden
connected
treasures.
distant worlds.
Through the
There was always
seasons,
the same problem.
families adapt,
Food
surviving the
disappeared.
trials of nature
A
with
successful hunt
ingenuity.
brought joy for a few days.
Over
Then came the smell
generations,
of decay,
these humble
the
camps
flies,
grow,
the
marking the
disappointment,
dawn of community
and the
and
return of
civilization.
hunger.
As
Again
dawn breaks,
and
civilization's roots take hold.
But
A
somewhere
new
beyond the
era
familiar
begins
valleys,
beside the
strange
life-giving
animals
springs.
gathered beside unusual
The harsh
waters.
sun scorches
Deer
the ancient
traveled
sea,
miles to lick
revealing
bare rocks.
salt crystals that
Birds
glisten
descended
like
upon
jewels.
forgotten marshes.
As the
And
water
curious
evaporates,
humans,
salt
as they
crystals
often do,
emerge,
began
reflecting
to wonder,
sunlight like diamonds.
why did the creatures keep returning?
This simple act of
What
sprinkling
secret had
salt
nature discovered
takes us
long
back
before
through time,
mankind?
revealing history's
The
layers.
answer would slowly reveal itself.
From
through
bustling
accidents,
towns to
patience,
wilderness,
and generations of
civilization
observation.
recedes,
It would
revealing
allow fish
nature's
to survive
dominance.
beyond the river, meat to survive beyond the hunt, families to survive beyond the winter, and eventually it would give people a reason to return to the same places again and again. Until camps became homes, and homes became villages, and villages became the first settlements that would change the human story forever. Before we step deeper into the darkness of tonight's story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more calming historical journeys. And wherever you are in the world, leave a comment below telling me your location and your local time. Now dim the lights. Section 1. Now dim the lights and allow yourself to step into a world that knows nothing of shelves filled with food, nothing of pantries, nothing of jars, nothing of tomorrow's leftovers waiting patiently for another day. You are born into a world where hunger is never very far away, not because food does not exist, not because the land is empty, but because everything alive eventually begins to disappear. And once something dies, time becomes your enemy. The morning air feels cool against your skin as pale sunlight spreads across the grasslands. Dew clings to the tall grasses around your camp. Somewhere nearby, water flows gently over smooth stones, carrying the soft scent of damp earth into the breeze. Birds begin their songs. Insects hum quietly. The world seems peaceful. At least for now. Your people have survived another night. Animal hides rustle as everyone slowly awakens. Someone adds branches to the fading embers left from yesterday's fire. Thin smoke rises into the air, carrying the familiar smell of ash and charred wood. Children stretch sleepily. Older faces study the sky. Nobody says very much. Morning has its own rhythm, and survival has its own routine. You live among perhaps 30 people. Not a village. Not a kingdom. Just a small band of wandering humans who know every hill, every river, bend, and every danger hidden beneath the endless sky. Some mornings bring fortune. Others bring disappointment. Nature decides. You simply adapt. Today, the hunters return before midday. You hear them long before you see them. Excited voices, heavy footsteps, the sound of antlers dragging across stones. Success, a young deer, Not enormous, but enough. Enough to make everyone smile. Enough to make children laugh. Enough to quiet the fear that often lingers beneath ordinary days. Stone blades begin their careful work. Hands stained by blood separate meat from bone. Fat is saved. Tendons are pulled aside. Nothing is wasted. Nothing ever can be. The smell fills the air. Rich, warm, promising. Soon strips of meat roast above the flames. Smoke dances upward into the bright afternoon sky. The scent spreads across the camp, making empty stomachs grow impatient. You eat slowly, not because there is abundance, because experience has taught caution, because abundance never lasts. The evening arrives quietly. The stars appear one by one. Laughter circles the fire. Stories pass between generations. Children fall asleep wrapped in soft hides. For a few hours, life feels safe, almost comfortable. But comfort is a fragile thing. The next morning, something has changed. The sweet smell of roasted meat is gone. In its place hangs another scent. Sharp, heavy, wrong. Flies gather. Small black shapes dance above yesterday's feast. The oldest members of your group notice first. Their faces say everything. Food left untouched through the night no longer looks inviting. The surface has changed. The smell has changed. And everyone understands what that means. The earth gives. Then the earth takes away. No one knows why. There are no words for bacteria. No understanding of invisible life. Only memories. Memories passed down through generations. Eat quickly. Share quickly. Waste nothing. Because once death touches flesh, time begins its silent work. And time always wins. Most hunts end this way. A few days of comfort. Then nothing. The great herds move elsewhere. Rivers rise and fall. Storms arrive unexpectedly. Sometimes hunters return empty-handed. Sometimes they do not return at all. And winter. Winter remembers no promises. Cold winds sweep across the land with little mercy. Grass disappears beneath frost. Animals become harder to find. Long nights stretch endlessly, while stomachs complain with quiet determination. You know those sounds well. Everyone does. The sound of children asking for food. The sound of old people pretending they are not hungry. The sound of chewing growing slower as meals become smaller. No one speaks of fear directly, but fear lives beside the fire. Always. There are moments when success itself becomes a burden. A large animal provides more meat than your people can consume. For a day or two there is celebration. For 3 days there is satisfaction. Then comes disappointment. Because the gift begins to vanish, not all at once, slowly, silently, as though the world refuses to let abundance remain. Perhaps that seems unfair, and perhaps it is. But this is simply the world you know. You cannot save spring for winter. You cannot carry summer into the snow. Tomorrow depends entirely upon tomorrow. Nothing lasts, not berries, not fish, not meat, not certainty. And so, year after year, your people continue walking, following rivers, following herds, following hope itself, never staying too long, never trusting too deeply. Because hunger is patient. It walks beside you. It sleeps beside you. And it always returns. Yet somewhere beyond the familiar valleys, hidden among ancient rocks and forgotten waters, nature keeps a secret already known by deer, by wild goats, by birds crossing endless skies, a secret that has waited millions of years. And very soon, without realizing it, you will begin following the same path. Not toward treasure, not toward gold, but toward something much smaller, something white, something ordinary, something that will eventually teach humanity how to hold tomorrow in its hands. Section 2. Winter loosens its grip at last. The frozen mornings become gentler, and thin green shoots begin appearing across the grasslands. Rivers swell with fresh snowmelt. Birds return from distant places, filling the air with familiar songs that seem almost forgotten after the long, cold months. Your people survive another season. Barely. The memories of hunger still linger. Even now, the older members of the band glance nervously toward the horizon, as though scarcity itself might suddenly appear out of nowhere. Experience has taught caution. The world often rewards optimism with disappointment, and so when spring arrives, everyone wastes little time. Hunters sharpen stone points. Women gather woven baskets. Children learn once again to recognize edible roots and berries hidden among the grasses. Life moves forward, as it always does. Yet something strange catches your attention this year. Not among humans, among animals. At first it seems unimportant. A few deer leave the open meadows and wander eastward toward barren hills where little food grows. Days later, wild horses make the same journey. Birds circle overhead before disappearing in the same direction. Even the mountain goats seem drawn there. Curious, very curious. One evening, as orange light fades behind distant ridges, you sit beside the fire with the oldest hunter in your band. His face carries countless winters. Scars mark his arms. Smoke from the fire wraps around him like an old companion. He notices your eyes following the deer. Then he smiles quietly, not with certainty, with memory. He remembers his grandfather speaking of strange places where animals gather for reasons nobody understands. Places where the earth tastes different. Places avoided by some tribes and respected by others. No one knows why. Perhaps spirits dwell there. Perhaps something beneath the ground calls to the beasts. Or perhaps, as old people often enjoy suggesting, animals simply know things humans are too slow to notice. A gentle mystery, nothing more. Still, the thought remains with you. Several days later, you join a hunting party. Morning mist hangs low over the grasslands. Moist earth presses softly beneath your feet. The smell of damp leaves fills the cool air. Somewhere far away, cranes cry above the river. The deer tracks are fresh, easy to follow. Yet they lead somewhere unusual. Not toward water, not toward shelter, not toward the places where animals normally feed. Hour after hour you follow, across valleys, past scattered trees, toward rocky hills where grass becomes thin and strange white patches appear upon the ground. And then you smell something unfamiliar, not unpleasant, just different, sharp, earthy, ancient. Ahead, dozens of animals gather. Wild sheep, deer, boars, even rabbits. They are not eating, not drinking. Instead, they lick exposed stones and paw eagerly at the soil. The sight feels almost absurd. You exchange puzzled glances with the others. One hunter laughs quietly. Perhaps the deer have become foolish. Perhaps rabbits enjoy eating rocks now. The world never lacks surprises. Still, something feels important. Animals do not waste energy. Every movement has purpose. You know this well. Predators hunt because they must. Birds migrate because they must. Deer flee because they must. So why would so many creatures travel long distances simply to lick bare earth? No one understands, but nobody forgets. The hunt itself proves successful. A young stag falls before sunset. And yet during the long walk home, your thoughts keep returning to those strange stones. Days become weeks. Then another surprise appears. A group of mammoths, distant giants of the plain, pauses near the same hills. Huge shadows move slowly beneath the clouds, their tusks gleaming pale against the evening light. They too stop. They too dig. And they too spend precious hours tasting the ground. Surely this cannot be coincidence. Even the birds seem drawn there. Curious indeed. The oldest woman in your group says the place must be sacred. The youngest hunters disagree. They suspect water hidden beneath the rocks. Others think invisible spirits feed the animals. Everyone has ideas. Nobody has answers. Historians thousands of years later will face similar questions. Some scholars believe prehistoric humans first learned about mineral-rich places by observing wildlife. Others suggest accidental discoveries along rivers and dry lake beds played a larger role. The truth remains uncertain, and perhaps that uncertainty feels strangely comforting, because discovery rarely arrives with certainty. It arrives with curiosity, and curiosity lives inside you. Summer grows warmer. The mystery deepens. Whenever herds migrate, many eventually return to those same rocky hills. Even during seasons when food becomes plentiful elsewhere, the animals continue visiting. Again and again, always returning. Patterns matter. Nature loves patterns. Humans simply require time to notice them. Eventually, your curiosity overcomes caution. One afternoon, while gathering roots near the valley, you separate from the others. The air smells of sun-warmed grass. Cicadas hum loudly among scattered shrubs. A gentle breeze cools your skin. You climb toward the strange place, alone. The stones beneath your feet appear pale and rough. Small pools left by recent rain shimmer beneath the sunlight. White marks stain the ground in curious shapes. Nearby, a deer raises its head. It watches you calmly, then returns to licking the rocks. You kneel. Carefully. The earth feels dry beneath your fingers. Tiny crystals sparkle against the sunlight, beautiful in their own quiet way. Without thinking, you touch one. Then bring your fingers to your lips. And suddenly, everything changes. Not dramatically, not with thunder, not with revelation. Just a taste. Strange. Sharp. Unlike anything you have known. A flavor hidden inside the earth itself. A flavor already understood by the deer, by the goats, by the mammoths, by countless creatures long before humanity. You blink, taste it again, and smile without understanding why. Because you have discovered something. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that will one day shape villages, kingdoms, and entire civilizations. But for now, it is simply a strange taste upon your tongue, and the world remains blissfully unaware of what waits ahead. Section 3. The strange taste stays with you, not only upon your tongue, inside your thoughts. Days pass, yet you find yourself remembering those pale crystals scattered across the rocks. You remember the deer licking the ground with quiet determination. You remember the mammoths digging with their great tusks. And most of all, you remember that flavor. Sharp, pleasant, unfamiliar. Nothing in your world tastes quite like it. The others laugh when you describe it. Not cruelly, just with amusement. After all, humans spend their days searching for food, not chewing stones. One hunter jokes that perhaps next winter, everyone will survive by eating rocks instead of rabbits. Even the old women smile. Life offers enough mysteries already. Still, curiosity spreads. And curiosity has a way of growing. Several days later, a small group follows you back to the strange hills. Morning sunlight filters through thin clouds. The air smells of wild sage and damp earth. Somewhere in the distance, cranes call beside the river. The animals are there again. Always there. Wild horses scrape the ground. Goats crowd around exposed patches of white. Birds peck at shallow puddles left by rain. Nothing about the scene feels accidental. The oldest hunter kneels beside the rocks. His fingers touch the white surface. He hesitates, then tastes it. His eyes widen slightly, not with fear, with surprise. Soon everyone tries it. Some grimace, others laugh. A child asks if the earth itself has become food. An interesting question. No one answers. Yet nobody forgets the flavor. On the journey home, pieces of white rock are carefully wrapped inside animal hides. Nobody knows why they bother carrying them. Perhaps simple curiosity. Perhaps instinct. Humans have always collected strange things. Shells, bright stones, feathers, memories. Now they collect this. At camp, the crystals become a source of endless fascination. People taste them. Children compare them. Old stories emerge about distant tribes who drink bitter waters or scrape strange rocks from cliffs. Perhaps your people are not the first. Historians still debate exactly when humans first recognized salt as something special. Some researchers believe even early hominins, hundreds of thousands of years ago, sought natural mineral sources. Others suspect the understanding came much later. The truth sleeps somewhere deep in prehistory, and prehistory enjoys keeping secrets. For several weeks, the crystals remain little more than curiosities, until one evening changes everything. The hunters return with fish. Many fish. More than usual. The river has been generous. Everyone celebrates. Smoke rises from the fire. Fat drips into glowing embers with soft hisses. The smell fills the camp with warmth and promise. Too much food, a wonderful problem, and a dangerous one. Because everyone knows what comes next. Eat quickly, share generously, waste as little as possible. Tomorrow waits for no one. As the fish are prepared, one young woman experiments with the strange white crystals. She crushes them with smooth stones and rubs the powder across several fish simply because she enjoys the taste. Nothing more. No grand plan. No brilliant insight. Just curiosity. The fish cook slowly over the fire. Everyone notices the difference. The flavor is richer, more satisfying. Children ask for more. Even the elders approve. Not bad. Not bad at all. Soon, others begin doing the same. Pieces of deer meat receive the same treatment. Broths become more flavorful. Roasted roots taste somehow brighter. Meals feel different. Not larger. Better. Perhaps that alone would have been enough. Perhaps salt might have remained only a pleasant addition to food. But fate enjoys surprises, and accidents often shape history more than wisdom. One afternoon, heavy rain forces everyone into shelter. Several pieces of fish prepared with crushed salt remain forgotten near the edge of the camp. They hang beneath stretched hides where smoke from the fire drifts gently through the air. Days pass. Nobody remembers them. The camp becomes busy with gathering berries and repairing tools. Children chase one another through tall grass. Life moves on, until someone notices the forgotten fish. Everyone expects the usual smell, the usual flies, the usual disappointment. Instead, something strange happens. The fish smell different. Dry. Smoky. Still recognizable. Still edible. Suspiciously edible. People stare. Then argue. Some insist no one should touch them. Others wonder whether spirits have protected the food. The oldest woman laughs softly. Spirits, she says, barely bother with fish. Her humor eases the tension. Carefully, cautiously, one hunter tastes a small piece. Nothing happens. Hours pass. Still nothing. The next morning he wakes healthy and cheerful. The mystery deepens. Perhaps luck. Perhaps coincidence. Perhaps something hidden inside those white crystals. Nobody knows. Not yet. But everyone remembers. More experiments follow. Some fail. Many fail. Pieces spoil exactly as before. Others last longer. Patterns slowly emerge. The white powder matters. Smoke matters. Wind matters. Dry air matters. Nature offers clues. Humans slowly begin listening. No one realizes it, but you have taken the first tiny step toward defeating time itself. Not completely, never completely, but enough. Enough to change the rhythm of survival. Enough to make tomorrow feel slightly less frightening. Enough to begin a journey that no animal ever could. Because deer know where salt hides. Birds know where water waits. But only humans ask questions. And sometimes those questions change the world. For now, however, the answers remain hidden. The white earth still guards its greatest secret. And your people, patient as always, continue searching. Section 4. The mystery refuses to leave your thoughts. Not because answers have appeared. Because questions have multiplied. The strange white crystals improve the taste of food. They seem to change fish left near the smoke. And animals wiser in certain matters than humans continue returning to those rocky hills with unwavering devotion. Something important hides inside the earth. You can feel it, even if you do not yet understand it. Summer settles across the land. Warm winds sweep over the grasslands. Insects hum beneath the afternoon sun. The scent of dry sage and flowering plants drifts through the air, while rivers shrink beneath the growing heat. Water retreats, and as water retreats, secrets appear. One morning, your band follows migrating animals farther south than usual. The journey leads across unfamiliar valleys, where the earth becomes flatter, and the air carries a strange smell. Not unpleasant, not sweet, something ancient. The elders wrinkle their noses, the children complain, and the hunters remain silent. By midday, you reach what was once a lake, or perhaps part of one. Now it lies mostly empty beneath the summer sun. Only shallow pools remain reflecting clouds upon still surfaces. The cracked ground stretches endlessly before you, marked with curious white lines and patches that sparkle beneath the light. At first it seems lifeless. Then you notice movement. Birds, dozens of them. Wild horses stand near the pools. Deer approach cautiously. Even wolves leave tracks around the edges of the drying basin. Animals again. Always animals, as though nature itself keeps repeating the same lesson. You kneel beside one of the white patches. The ground feels rough beneath your fingers. Tiny crystals cling to the surface. Sunlight makes them shine like frost. You taste them. The same flavor. Sharp. Familiar. The white earth again. Only this time there are endless amounts. Enough to fill both hands. Enough to fill baskets. enough to make you wonder how much still remains hidden beneath the world. Others begin gathering the crystals carefully. Children laugh while scraping them from the ground with shells and stones. Women spread them upon hides to dry further beneath the sun. Nobody knows exactly what they are collecting, only that they seem valuable, useful, different. The old hunter who first followed the deer smiles quietly. Perhaps the animals have been teaching humans all along. A comforting thought, that nature leaves instructions, and curious minds eventually learn to read them. Over the next few days, your people remain near the dry lake. The air grows hotter each afternoon. Dust rises beneath every step. Small breezes carry the smell of warm clay and distant rain. At sunset, the white patches glow faintly beneath orange skies. Beautiful, almost magical. One evening, the oldest woman speaks of ancient waters that once covered the world. Her grandmother told stories of endless seas beyond imagination. No one knows whether such tales are true. But generations from now, scientists will discover that many salt deposits are indeed the remains of ancient seas, trapped and transformed by countless ages. History and memory sometimes walk together, and sometimes they merely wave at each other from opposite hills. No one in your camp knows this, of course. Yet somehow the stories feel right. The lake itself offers more surprises. As the remaining pools shrink beneath the relentless sun, thin white layers form around their edges. Day after day the crystals return. The water disappears. The white gift remains. Simple, reliable, almost generous. And humans rarely forget generosity. Soon, everyone develops their own ideas. One family prefers crystals from the rocks. Another prefers those gathered beside the pools. Some believe sunlight makes them stronger. Others insist moonlight improves their taste. People are wonderfully creative when they know almost nothing. And honestly, sometimes certainty arrives far too early. Historians continue debating how ancient people first harvested salt. Some believe coastal evaporation ponds appeared naturally. Others suggest dry lakes and mineral springs played a greater role in the earliest discoveries. No one can say with complete confidence. The truth faded long ago, but traces remain. And you are living among those traces. The strange white crystals slowly become part of daily life. Pieces are traded between families. Hunters carry small pouches during long journeys. Mothers add crushed salt to soups and roasted roots. Even children recognize its taste. The world feels slightly richer now. Not easier, just richer. Yet another mystery begins to emerge. The hunters notice that meat covered with more of the white powder behaves differently. Not always, but often enough. A few strips hanging near the smoke survive several days longer. Fish left above the fire lose their moisture. Flies seem less interested. The smell changes, less foul, less familiar. Something curious is happening. Nobody understands why. And perhaps understanding matters less than observation. Humans are patient creatures. You learn slowly. Season after season. Failure after failure. The world rewards persistence. One night, while stars shine above the camp and distant wolves sing beneath the moon, you sit beside the fire holding a handful of crystals collected from the dry lake. They look so ordinary. Nothing about them suggests greatness. No brilliant colors, no warmth, no movement. Just tiny white pieces born from vanished water. Yet somehow these quiet gifts left behind by ancient lakes have already changed your meals. And perhaps, though nobody can imagine it yet, they will someday change everything else. Homes, villages, roads, kingdoms. But those stories belong to the future. For now, you simply watch the fire dance beneath the stars and wonder why the earth leaves treasures hidden inside forgotten waters. And somewhere nearby, strips of fish hanging above the smoke continue slowly drying in the darkness, waiting, patiently, keeping their secret a little longer. Section 5. The dry lake remains behind you, but not in your thoughts. Even after your people return to familiar valleys, the memory follows like a quiet companion. The taste of the white crystals lingers upon meals. Small pouches of salt travel beside stone blades and animal hides. And every now and then, someone mentions the strange sight of deer licking bare earth beneath the summer sun. It still feels curious, almost amusing, and yet the question refuses to disappear. Why? Why would creatures travel so far for something that appears to be nothing more than white dust? The seasons continue their endless dance. Warm days slowly shorten. The grasses turn golden. Cold mornings begin returning to the world. And once again, the herds begin moving. This time you pay closer attention, not only to their tracks, to their habits, to their choices, to the strange patterns hidden beneath ordinary life. The old hunter notices your growing fascination. His face, weathered by decades beneath sun and snow, carries the patient smile of someone who has watched countless mysteries unfold. He says very little, but sometimes silence teaches more than words. And so when a group of deer changes direction unexpectedly, he nods toward the hills. You follow. The journey lasts most of the day. Dry leaves crunch beneath your feet. A cool wind carries the smell of pine and distant rain. Ravens circle above their calls, echoing through the valleys. Ahead, the animals slow, not because they are tired, because they have arrived. Again. Always the same places, the same springs, the same exposed stones, the same patches of white earth. And they are not alone. Wild sheep gather beside them. Boars push one another aside impatiently. Mountain goats climb dangerous slopes simply to reach certain rocks. Even birds descend from the sky. The sight feels strangely peaceful. Not predators, not prey, just creatures sharing something precious. You crouch quietly and watch. Hours pass. Nobody grows bored, because nature itself is speaking. And when nature speaks, wise people listen. One young hunter whispers that perhaps the rocks contain hidden water. Another wonders whether spirits live beneath the ground. The old hunter chuckles softly. Spirits again. They always receive credit for interesting things. Perhaps spirits simply enjoy keeping a low profile. Everyone laughs. Quietly. No need to offend invisible neighbors. Yet no explanation truly satisfies. The mystery remains. Modern scholars believe animals seek salt because their bodies need minerals lost through sweat, blood, and daily life. Herbivores especially require sodium, which plants often provide in limited amounts. But you know none of this. You know only what your eyes reveal. And your eyes reveal devotion. These creatures are willing to travel great distances, risk predators, leave fertile valleys, all for a taste of stone. Such determination deserves respect. As autumn deepens, another clue appears. The hunters notice something curious. Animals that visit the salt places seem healthier, stronger. Their coats shine. Their bodies carry more fat before winter arrives. The old women notice as well. Bones from these animals often feel heavier. Their marrow tastes richer. Their hides seem thicker. Coincidence, perhaps. Or perhaps not. No one knows. And uncertainty walks comfortably beside wisdom. One evening, as smoke rises gently from the fire, an elderly woman tells stories remembered from her grandmother. She speaks of distant tribes that follow bison to sacred springs. She describes birds that gather beside bitter lakes and strange caves where goats lick walls made of stone. The stories sound unbelievable, and yet you have seen enough to doubt nothing. Humans enjoy pretending they understand the world. Nature enjoys reminding them otherwise. Winter arrives early. Snow dusts the hills. Cold air bites your skin each morning. Wood crackles louder inside the fire. Breath hangs like ghosts in the darkness. Food becomes harder to find, but the deer still make their journeys. Even now, even in snow, their determination astonishes you. One afternoon, while tracking a wounded stag, you discover something unexpected. The animal has stopped beside a frozen spring, not to rest, to lick exposed rocks, even wounded, even exhausted, still seeking the white earth. The sight touches something inside you, because suddenly you understand. Not with knowledge, with instinct. If the animals need this so desperately, perhaps humans need it too. Not as medicine, not as magic, simply as part of life. Perhaps the earth hides necessities inside ordinary things. Water, fire, stone. And now this. Small white crystals born from forgotten seas. The realization changes how your people treat salt. No longer merely a curiosity. No longer just flavor. Something more. Children are encouraged to collect it. Hunters carry it on journeys. Families save every grain carefully. Some even offer small portions to pregnant women and elders. Why, no one can fully explain. Only that it feels right. Historians still disagree about how much prehistoric humans understood the biological importance of salt. Some researchers argue that instinct and observation guided early communities long before science existed. Others believe the significance emerged slowly over many generations. Perhaps both are true. Humans rarely discover anything all at once. Knowledge grows, like trees, slowly, quietly, one ring at a time. Yet the greatest mystery still waits ahead. Because although your people now understand that salt matters, they do not yet understand why those forgotten fish survived, or why strips of meat hanging near the smoke seem different, or why decay itself sometimes appears weaker in the presence of the white crystals. That secret remains hidden, invisible, patient, waiting for chance, waiting for hunger, waiting for one simple accident that will reveal perhaps the greatest gift salt ever offered humanity. Not taste, not strength, not health. Time. The ability to steal time itself. And in a world where everything spoils, time may be the greatest treasure of all. Section 6. Long before anyone understands its greatest secret, salt becomes something familiar. Not common, never common, but familiar. You no longer think of the white crystals as strange gifts left behind by dry lakes. They have become part of life. Small leather pouches filled with precious grains travel beside stone knives and bundles of dried hides. People speak of them casually now, almost affectionately, and that is often how important things begin. Not with celebrations, not with grand discoveries, simply with habits. Autumn settles across the land once more. Cold winds carry the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. Morning frost returns to the grass. Smoke from the campfire hangs low in the still air, bringing warmth to hands stiff from the chill. Life continues. Children grow taller, elders move slower, the world changes quietly, and salt changes with it. At first, your people use it for flavor, nothing more. A pinch added to roasted roots somehow makes them sweeter. A little rubbed over fish brings out tastes that were always there, but somehow hidden. Meat cooked above glowing embers feels richer and more satisfying. Even the children notice, and children notice everything involving food. One little boy insists that the white crystals make rabbit taste happier. Nobody knows exactly what that means. But everyone laughs. Perhaps rabbit happiness has a flavor. The old women begin adding crushed salt to broths made from bones and herbs. Hunters sprinkle it upon marrow and fat. Meals once plain now carry something new, something deeper. The difference feels small, yet strangely comforting. Humans are creatures who appreciate comfort, especially during difficult seasons. But flavor alone cannot explain why everyone grows so protective of the crystals. Soon, other uses emerge. One afternoon, a young hunter returns with deep scratches along his arm after an unpleasant disagreement with a wild boar. The wound is cleaned beside the river, then, following advice remembered from generations past. One of the older women rubs water mixed with crushed salt over the injury. The young hunter complains loudly, very loudly. Apparently, the water bites harder than the boar. The camp enjoys his suffering far more than kindness requires. Still, the wound heals, perhaps because of the salt, perhaps despite it. Modern scientists understand that salt water can help clean certain wounds, though historians still debate how much prehistoric people understood about such practices. What survives are hints, fragments, memories passed between generations, and memories often wear strange clothing. Soon another use appears. Long journeys. Hunters traveling for days carry small bags of crystals. After exhausting pursuits beneath the summer sun, many place grains upon their tongues or mix them into water collected from streams. They say it restores strength. Perhaps imagination plays a role. Humans have tremendous faith in rituals, even accidental rituals. Yet something about salt feels valuable beyond explanation. Pregnant women receive extra portions. The oldest members of the group are offered bowls of soup seasoned carefully. Children recovering from illness are encouraged to drink broths touched by the precious crystals. Nobody calls it medicine. Nobody understands minerals. There are no words for sodium, only observations. And observations matter. They always have. Winter arrives early that year. Snow spreads across the valleys. Trees stand bare beneath gray skies. Breath turns white in the morning air. The smell of wood smoke clings to clothing and hair. Life becomes smaller, closer. People gather around the fire for warmth and stories. And during those long evenings, salt becomes something else entirely. A gift. Visitors arriving from neighboring bands are offered flavored broths. Families exchange handfuls of crystals alongside tools and furs. A father presents a small pouch to his daughter before she joins another family through marriage. Not wealth. Not yet. Something gentler. A symbol of care. Even the children learn respect. No one spills salt carelessly. No one wastes it. Perhaps because gathering it requires effort. Or perhaps because humans instinctively treasure things that improve ordinary days. Some evenings, the old hunter speaks of distant places. He remembers hearing stories from travelers long ago. Bitter springs hidden among mountains. White caves where animals gather. Lakes that disappear beneath summer heat, leaving glittering treasures behind. No one knows how far such stories travel before truth grows tired and rests. But everyone listens, because winter encourages listening. Outside, wolves howl beneath the stars. Inside, warmth surrounds the fire, and stories become companions. Historians still argue whether early humans recognized salt as something essential, or whether appreciation developed gradually through thousands of years of experience. Perhaps there was no single moment, no great revelation, just countless small discoveries. A grandmother noticing soup tasted better, a hunter feeling stronger after a journey, a wound cleaned with bitter water, a child smiling over flavored fish. Knowledge often arrives quietly, like snow. Yet despite all these uses, the greatest mystery remains untouched. Nobody knows why certain pieces of meat hanging near the fire spoil slower. Nobody understands why flies avoid some fish longer than others. People notice, certainly, but patterns are difficult companions, and coincidence enjoys disguising itself as truth. Still little clues continue gathering. A forgotten strip of venison here, a smoked fish there. Pieces coated with more crystals seem different. Not always, but often enough. The old woman who tends the fire notices. She says very little. She simply observes. And observation is a kind of wisdom. One evening, while preparing a meal beneath the soft glow of sunset, she rubs far more salt than usual over several pieces of meat before hanging them high above the smoke. Not because she expects anything, not because she understands what will happen, simply because experience has taught her that strange things deserve another chance. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight, time itself waits patiently, unaware that humans are slowly learning how to fight back. Not with weapons, not with strength, but with tiny white crystals gathered from forgotten waters. And before long, one accidental experiment will reveal a truth so powerful that it will change hunger forever. Section 7. Winter tightens around the world. Snow settles across the grasslands in soft layers. Bare branches creak beneath cold winds. The smell of smoke lingers constantly inside the camp, clinging to hides hair and memories alike. Everyone stays closer now, closer to the fire, closer to one another, closer to hope. Food has become scarce again, not dangerously scarce. Not yet, but enough to make every successful hunt feel precious. One morning, fortune finally smiles. The hunters return with 2 young deer. Not enormous animals, but enough. Enough to quiet worried thoughts. Enough to bring laughter back to tired faces. The camp comes alive. Stone blades flash beneath pale sunlight. Children gather branches for the fires. Women prepare hides and containers. Everyone works with practiced hands. Nothing will be wasted. Nothing ever should be. The old woman who tends the evening fires watches quietly. Her hair has grown silver. Her hands bear the marks of countless winters. She rarely speaks unless something deserves words. And today, something does. Without explanation, she reaches for the leather pouch containing the white crystals. Not a little, a great deal. Far more than anyone usually uses. The younger hunters exchange amused glances. One man jokes that she plans to feed the meat to rocks. Another suggests perhaps she simply dislikes deer. The old woman smiles. Wisdom often enjoys being underestimated. Carefully, she crushes the crystals with smooth stones. The sound echoes softly through the camp. Then she rubs the coarse grains deep into several long strips of meat. Not all of it, just some. The rest is prepared normally. As always. She hangs the salted pieces above the fire where thin smoke rises steadily into the cold air. Day and night, the meat sways gently above the warmth. Nobody pays much attention. Life remains busy. Snow falls. Children play. Hunters repair spears. Stories circle the fire. Time passes. And time usually ruins everything. Everyone knows this. It is one of nature's oldest rules. Yet several days later, something strange happens. Very strange. The unsalted meat begins to change. First the smell, then the texture. Flies appear whenever the weather warms. The familiar disappointment settles across the camp. Everyone understands. Eat what remains. Lose the rest. That is simply life. But the strips hanging above the fire look different. Still dark. Still dry. Still carrying the rich scent of smoke. The old woman notices first. Her eyes narrow. Interesting. Very interesting. She cuts away a small piece, examines it, smells it, then hands it to the old hunter. He laughs, not because he doubts her, because chewing old meat sounds deeply unpleasant. Still, curiosity wins. It usually does. He bites carefully. The camp falls silent. Everyone watches. Even the children stop moving. Nothing happens. The old hunter chews slowly, then nods. Not bad. Actually, quite good. Surprise spreads across every face. Impossible. The meat should have spoiled. It always spoils. That is the rule. But this piece tastes different. Drier, smokier, stronger. Yet still good. The old woman smiles without triumph, only curiosity. Perhaps luck, perhaps cold weather, perhaps the smoke, or perhaps the white crystals. Nobody knows. And so they wait. Another day passes, then another. Still, the meat survives. Not fresh, not soft, but edible. Still nourishing. Still useful. Still there. And in a world where food disappears like mist beneath the sun, that simple fact feels almost magical. The camp begins arguing. Naturally, humans adore arguments nearly as much as they adore food. One young hunter insists the smoke deserves credit. Another believes the winter cold performed the miracle. The oldest woman quietly points toward the empty salt pouch. No speeches, no boasting, just a raised eyebrow. The gesture says enough. More experiments begin. Not because anyone understands, because hunger teaches patience. A rabbit is prepared with heavy layers of salt. Fish receive the same treatment. Some pieces are left high above the smoke, others remain farther away. Results vary. Some spoil, some survive. Patterns emerge slowly. The more salt, the more smoke, the drier the air, the longer food endures. Nobody speaks of defeating time. That idea sounds ridiculous. And yet, something impossible has happened. Food remains. Days become weeks. Weeks become possibilities. Modern historians believe preservation through salting and drying transformed human survival. Yet scholars still debate exactly when people first understood the process and how rapidly the knowledge spread. The truth has vanished into deep time. Perhaps there was no single inventor, no brilliant mind, just countless grandmothers, countless accidents, countless hungry people refusing to surrender. A rather human story, and perhaps a comforting one. One evening, while snow falls softly beyond the camp, the old woman hangs another row of salted venison above the fire. The smell drifting through the air is wonderful. Wood smoke, warm fat, drying meat, safety, not complete safety, never complete. But something new, something unfamiliar. tomorrow no longer feels quite so frightening. For the first time in your life, food from yesterday might still feed you next week. A remarkable thought. And somewhere beyond the darkness unseen by anyone gathered around the fire, history itself quietly changes direction. Not with kings, not with battles, not with monuments, but with an old woman. A handful of white crystals, and several strips of venison hanging patiently above the smoke. The world does not know it yet, but humanity has just discovered how to carry summer into winter, and nothing will ever be quite the same again. Section 8. The old woman never claims she has discovered anything. That would seem strange. Nature, after all, rarely reveals its secrets all at once, and people who survive long enough learn to distrust miracles. They prefer patterns. Patterns feel safer. Patterns can be tested. So nobody celebrates. Nobody declares victory over hunger. Instead, everyone watches and waits. Winter still grips the land. Frost covers the ground each morning. Ice forms along the edges of the river. Smoke hangs low beneath gray skies, carrying the comforting smell of wood fat and dried hides. Life continues, as it always does. Yet something inside the camp has changed. Not dramatically, quietly. Hope now lives beside the fire. The strips of venison hanging above the smoke remain edible. Day after day, they survive longer than anyone expects. They become harder, drier, more difficult to chew. But they do not disappear. That alone feels extraordinary. The old hunter jokes that perhaps the meat itself has become stubborn. Everyone laughs. Stubborn meat seems preferable to hungry children. And so more experiments begin. Not because anyone uses that word. Experiment sounds too clever. These are simply observations. Simple questions. Simple attempts. What happens if fish receive more salt? What happens if meat hangs closer to the smoke? What happens during warmer weather? What happens when rain arrives? Nature answers slowly, sometimes cruelly. Several pieces spoil completely. The smell announces failure before anyone touches them. Flies gather. The old woman throws the ruined meat into the bushes with a disappointed sigh. Failure remains familiar. No one is surprised. Yet other pieces survive. And those successes matter. Spring eventually returns. Rivers swell with melting snow. Fresh grass spreads across the valleys. Birds sing loudly in the mornings, and the scent of damp earth fills the air. The world awakens again. So do new questions. Fish become plentiful. Too plentiful. A wonderful problem. Dozens are caught during one lucky week. Far more than the camp can eat. In previous years, such abundance would bring sadness. Too much food, not enough time. Nature can be strangely cruel that way. But now, things are different. The old woman smiles. The children recognize that smile. It usually means work. Fish are cleaned beside the river. Salt crystals are crushed carefully between stones. Strips are rubbed generously and suspended above long fires where gentle smoke rises day and night. The smell fills the camp. Wood smoke, fresh fish, warm ashes, comfort. Days later, everyone waits. The fish remain. Another day passes. Still good. Another week. Still useful. The camp buzzes with excitement. Quiet excitement. Sleepy excitement. No one wishes to offend fate by celebrating too loudly. One young hunter becomes convinced that singing to the meat helps preserve it. A delightful theory. He sings often, terribly. His voice resembles an injured goose. The children laugh endlessly. The old woman insists the meat survives, despite the songs, not because of them. Perhaps wisdom and humor share the same blanket. Historians still debate how early preservation methods developed. Some researchers believe smoking alone came first. Others suggest salting and drying evolved together over many generations. The exact story remains uncertain, perhaps because thousands of forgotten people contributed tiny pieces. No heroes, no names, just ordinary families trying to outwit hunger. Summer arrives. Warm winds sweep through the grasslands. Insects buzz beneath the sun. Dust rises beneath wandering herds. And another lesson appears. Humidity matters. Several batches prepared during rainy weeks spoil quickly. Others, hanging in dry weather, survive beautifully. The old hunter notices. He says little. He simply moves the drying racks closer to the smoke. Results improve. Observation, adjustment, patience, the foundations of wisdom. Without realizing it, your people begin creating rules, not written rules, remembered rules. Salt heavily. Keep the smoke gentle. Avoid damp air. Hang the meat high. Trust your nose. Trust your eyes. And above all, never become careless, because hunger punishes carelessness. The children learn these lessons naturally. They watch their parents. They imitate the elders. By the time they become adults, preserving fish and meat feels ordinary, as though humanity has always known. But that is the trick memory plays. Once something becomes familiar, it feels ancient. Yet only a few years ago, none of this existed. And now, something remarkable happens. For the first time in anyone's memory, food survives from one season into another. Summer fish feed people during autumn. Autumn venison reaches the first snows. The impossible becomes routine, and routine changes people. Not immediately. Slowly. Subtly. No longer must every hunt be consumed at once. No longer must abundance disappear within days. Tomorrow becomes less frightening. The future itself begins to feel different. Because food means time, and time means choices. More choices than your ancestors ever possessed. One evening, while stars shine brightly above the camp, the old woman sits beside the fire, holding a strip of dried fish, prepared many weeks earlier. She smiles softly, not because she understands bacteria, not because she knows chemistry. She knows none of these things. She simply knows this. The world once took everything immediately. Now it waits, and that small delay changes everything. Nearby children sleep soundly beneath warm hides. Smoke rises gently into the night sky. The smell of drying meat drifts through the darkness. And though no one realizes it yet, humanity has begun its first victory against the oldest enemy of all. Not predators, not winter, not distance. Decay. Slowly, patiently. One strip of meat at a time. Section 9. For countless generations, tomorrow has always felt uncertain. Not because your people lacked courage, not because they lacked skill, but because nature rarely offered guarantees. A successful hunt fed everyone today. Tomorrow belonged to luck. And luck, as everyone knows, enjoys disappearing when most needed. Yet something subtle has begun changing. Not the rivers, not the seasons, not the stars above your camp. Something inside people. Because for the first time, tomorrow's meal sometimes already exists. The realization arrives slowly, almost shyly. One cold morning, as mist rises from the river and the smell of wet grass fills the air, a young mother unwraps several strips of smoked venison prepared many weeks earlier. Her child had fallen ill. The hunters had returned empty-handed. Nobody expected much from the day. But the meat remains, dry, dark, still good. She places pieces beside the fire, warming them gently. Soon the familiar scent fills the air. The little boy smiles weakly, and everyone notices. Because they remember. Not long ago, such a morning would have brought fear. Today it brings breakfast, a small miracle, perhaps the greatest kind, not dramatic, not loud, just quiet relief. As the years pass, preserving food becomes as important as finding it. Hunters still celebrate successful kills. But now, another kind of celebration exists. Preparation. People speak proudly about full drying racks. Children count rows of fish hanging above the smoke. The old women inspect supplies with the seriousness of kings examining treasure. Perhaps they are treasure. Treasure you can chew. The camp itself begins to change. Near the fires, special places are created for storing food. Flat stones keep supplies away from damp ground. Animal hides protect bundles from rain. Elevated branches keep curious scavengers from stealing precious meals. Nothing complicated, nothing grand, but deliberate. That is new. Humans have always gathered food. Now they begin planning for hunger. And planning changes everything. Spring floods no longer inspire quite as much panic. A failed hunt feels disappointing rather than terrifying. Even the long winters seem slightly less cruel. Not easy. Never easy. But manageable. And manageable things give birth to hope. Historians believe the ability to preserve food played a major role in changing prehistoric societies. Yet scholars continue debating how much these early methods influenced population growth and settlement patterns. The evidence whispers. It rarely shouts. Still, the whispers tell remarkable stories. Summer arrives with unexpected abundance. Fish crowd the river. Birds nest along the reeds. Wild berries cover the hillsides. In earlier years, your people would have feasted desperately, knowing much of the bounty would vanish before it could be consumed. Now the camp becomes wonderfully busy. Smoke rises day and night. Children gather firewood. Men construct drying racks. Women crush salt crystals beside smooth stones worn by years of use. Even the old hunter participates, mostly by offering advice nobody requested. Age grants many privileges. Unsolicited wisdom appears to be one of them. The camp smells magnificent. Wood smoke, fish, fresh herbs, warm hides drying in the sun. Comfort, and beneath all of it something unfamiliar. Security, not complete security. Enough to sleep more deeply, enough to dream further. The old woman notices another change. People argue less during difficult days. There is less desperation, less fear hidden behind sharp words. Hunger, she knows, turns even kind people into unpleasant company. Food stored for tomorrow creates patience. Patience creates peace, and peace allows stories. Evenings become longer, calmer. Families sit together beside the fire, chewing dried meat, while stars appear above the dark horizon. Children listen to tales repeated countless times. The crackling flames mix with distant calls from night birds. Life slows, not because danger has vanished, because panic has. A beautiful difference. One autumn disaster nearly strikes. Storms arrive early. Herds disappear. Rain ruins several hunting trips. Days pass without success. In previous years, everyone would have feared starvation. Instead, bundles are unwrapped. Smoked fish, salted venison, dried rabbit. Enough. Not abundance, but enough. The old hunter smiles. His eyes shine with quiet satisfaction. For once, the sky has failed to frighten him. An unusual experience. The sky usually wins. And perhaps that is when the truth finally settles inside everyone's hearts. Not minds, hearts. Food is no longer simply something found. It is something saved. Something carried forward. Something entrusted to tomorrow. Children born now grow up expecting drying racks. They assume smokehouses have always existed. They think hanging fish beside the fire is as natural as breathing. They do not realize they stand at the beginning of something extraordinary. Memory is strange that way. It transforms miracles into routines, and routines into traditions. Meanwhile, another change appears. Without discussing it openly, your people begin returning to familiar places more often. Places with reliable rivers, good hunting, nearby salt sources, strong memories, and plenty of space for drying food. Why wander endlessly when some places offer so much? The thought feels almost dangerous, almost foolish. Your ancestors walked because they had no choice. But now, perhaps choice itself is changing. Perhaps tomorrow no longer demands endless movement. Perhaps a place remembered can become a place revisited. And perhaps someday, a place revisited might become something even greater. Not yet, not quite. But the idea has been born. And ideas once born are difficult to kill, especially when they smell of wood smoke and dried venison hanging safely above the fire. Section 10, Winter has always been the great examiner. It asks the same question every year. Are you ready, hostiers? The answer has been uncertain. Snow covers the grasslands. Rivers freeze along their edges. Trees stand bare beneath heavy skies. The wind moves through the camp with cold fingers slipping beneath hides and through every careless gap. You feel it on your face. You feel it in your bones. You feel it most clearly in the silence before dawn. Winter makes the world smaller. The herds move farther away. Roots hide beneath frozen ground. Berries vanish from the hillsides. Even the river seems less generous, as though fish themselves have grown suspicious of the season. Everyone knows this pattern. Everyone remembers previous winters, the empty stomachs, the anxious glances, the careful division of tiny meals. But this winter begins differently. Near the center of camp, bundles hang beneath a shelter of branches and hides. Some are wrapped in cured skins. Others rest inside shallow storage pits lined with dry grass and stone. Smoked fish, salted venison, dried strips of rabbit. Food from another season. Food that should have vanished. The sight feels almost unreal. A child points to the bundles one morning and asks whether summer is sleeping inside them. No one laughs at first, because in a way she is right. Summer has been folded into winter. Not perfectly, not forever, but enough. The first great storm arrives before the moon is full. Snow falls for 2 days. Hunting becomes impossible. The wind roars across the open land, shaking shelters and scattering loose ash from the fire. In earlier years, such weather brought fear quickly. Now the old woman simply opens one bundle. A meal appears. Dry, smoky, chewy, wonderful. The meat softens slowly in hot broth. Steam rises into the cold air, carrying the scent of salt fat and herbs. Everyone gathers close hands wrapped around warm bowls. It is not a feast. It is better than that. It is survival without panic. And that is a deeper kind of luxury. The old hunter tastes the broth and nods as though he personally negotiated with winter. Perhaps he did, in his own way, through patience, memory, and many years of not dying foolishly. Winter continues. Another hunt fails. Then another. The snow grows deeper around the camp. Wolves leave tracks near the outer shelters. Children stay close to the fires, while elders repair tools and tell stories in low voices. Still, the stored food remains, less each day. But present. That single fact changes the mood of everyone. People sleep longer. Arguments fade faster. Even the youngest children sense the difference. Fear has not disappeared, but it has lost some of its teeth. Historians often describe food preservation as one of humanity's quiet revolutions. Scholars still debate how directly it led to permanent settlement because many changes happened slowly and unevenly across different regions. But inside your winter camp, the connection feels simple. Stored food creates safety. Safety creates time. Time creates choices. And choices create new ways of living. One afternoon, as pale sunlight breaks through the clouds, a group of hunters prepares to leave. In previous winters, every able body might have joined desperate searches for animals. This time, fewer go. Others stay behind. Some tend fires. Some repair shelters. Some scrape hides. Some teach children how to crush salt and arrange meat above smoke. The camp no longer lives only from hunt to hunt. Work has widened. Life has widened. That may sound small. It is not. When hunger loosens its grip, human attention begins to wander toward other useful things. Better tools, stronger shelters, safer storage, kinder stories. Even jokes become easier when your stomach is not composing tragic poetry. And yes, hunger is a terrible poet, a very dramatic one. During the coldest weeks, the preserved fish become especially valuable. They are hard and salty, but they soften in water. They flavor broths beautifully. They give strength when fresh meat cannot be found. You begin to understand something important. Salt has not ended winter. Nothing ends winter, but salt has changed your relationship with it. Winter is no longer only an enemy. It is a season to prepare for. That idea settles slowly into the minds of your people. Preparation becomes a kind of wisdom. The elders begin speaking not only about where animals move, but where salt can be found before cold weather returns. The white places matter now. Dry lakes, mineral springs, coastal flats, bitter pools. Places once visited by animals become landmarks in human memory. They become destinations. They become promises. As winter weakens, the last stored bundles are opened. Nobody wastes them. Every strip is shared carefully. Every bowl is finished. Even the children understand the seriousness of what has happened. Your people have crossed the hungry season with less fear than before. Not easily, but differently. And difference is where history begins. When the first thaw arrives, water runs beneath the snow with soft murmurs. Birds return cautiously to the reeds. The air smells of mud smoke and new grass waiting beneath the frost. People step outside with tired smiles. They are thinner, but alive. More than alive. Changed, because now everyone knows what must happen next. When spring fish fill the river, more must be salted. When summer herds grow fat, more meat must be dried. When the dry lake shines white beneath the sun, more crystals must be gathered. The future has become something you can prepare for, not control, never control, but meet with fuller hands. And as your band looks toward the coming warm season, one thought rises quietly among many minds. You will return to the salt places, not by accident, not merely from curiosity, but because survival now depends on them. The white earth has become part of your path. And soon, that path will begin leading your people back to the same places again and again, until wandering itself starts to change. Section 11. Spring arrives with soft rain and patient sunlight. Snow retreats from the valleys. Rivers swell once again with cold water from distant hills. Green shoots push through dark soil, and birds return with songs that seem to have waited all winter for their moment. Your people emerge from the cold season thinner, but alive, and perhaps more importantly, wiser. Because survival no longer feels like something that happens only by chance. It feels like something that can be prepared for. That thought changes everything. Not immediately. Quietly. As the world awakens, conversations around the morning fires begin to sound different. Hunters still discuss the movement of deer. Gatherers still speak of berries and roots. But now, another subject joins them. Salt. How much remains? How much will be needed? When should the journey begin? Even the children know the answer. Soon. Very soon. The old hunter smiles when he hears them. Years ago, nobody would have imagined traveling specifically to collect white crystals from dry lakes and bitter springs. Now those places have names, memories, stories, importance. They matter. When the weather becomes warm enough, the band begins its journey. Not toward unknown lands, not after migrating herds. Towards somewhere familiar. The path itself feels strange, because you have walked it before. You recognize the twisted pine beside the river. You know the valley where wild flowers bloom. You remember the hill where one hunter slipped and spent an entire afternoon insisting the earth had attacked him. Humans remember odd things. Perhaps that is part of our charm. The air smells of fresh grass and damp earth. Insects buzz around small pools. The sound of rushing water accompanies your footsteps. Children race ahead excitedly. They know where they are going, not because they discovered the place, because they belong to it. And that idea is new. For countless generations, belonging has always followed people. Now perhaps it begins attaching itself to places. As you reach the dry lake, joy spreads through the group. The white patches glitter beneath the sun, exactly as everyone remembers. Birds gather along the edges of the remaining pools. Deer tracks crisscross the mud. Nothing has changed. And somehow that feels wonderful. Familiarity itself becomes comforting. The camp rises quickly, not temporary shelters built in haste. Better ones, stronger ones. People remember where the wind blows hardest. They know where shade appears during the afternoon. They know which trees provide the best firewood and where fish can be found nearby. Knowledge accumulates, and accumulated knowledge becomes attachment. Historians still debate when seasonal camps first evolved into regular gathering places. Some scholars suggest climate and food resources played the largest role. Others emphasize preservation and reliable mineral sources. Perhaps both paths lead to the same destination. Humans stay where life becomes easier, and salt makes life easier. Work begins immediately. Children gather fallen branches. Women scrape salt from drying pools. Hunters track deer while staying close to camp. Smoke rises once more into the blue sky. The smell fills the air. Wood smoke, fish, warm hides, summer itself. And for the first time, something else joins these familiar scents. Expectation. Because everyone knows they will return next year, and perhaps the year after that. The old woman who first noticed the strange meat sits beside the fire, watching children play around drying racks. She laughs softly. Years ago, they played different games. Games about hunting. Games about predators. Now they pretend to collect salt and argue about whose fish tastes better. Civilization begins in strange ways. One evening, visitors arrive. Another band. Friendly faces. People remembered from previous summers. Greetings are exchanged. Stories are shared. Children who once met briefly now recognize one another immediately. The camp grows larger. The fires brighter. Someone brings beautiful shells collected far away. Someone else carries obsidian sharper than any stone your people possess. Nothing is traded formally. Not yet. But gifts move between hands. Friendships strengthen. And beneath it all lies a simple truth. Everyone came here because of salt. Without the white crystals, these meetings would never happen. Without preserved food, no one would remain long enough. The place itself creates connections. As summer passes, routines develop naturally. Certain families prefer particular areas. Specific drying racks stand in familiar locations. Stories become attached to individual trees and rocks. People laugh about old memories. Remember the year of heavy rain? Remember the wolf that stole the fish? Remember when little Taran fell into the salt pool and smelled like soup for days? Everyone laughs, because memories create belonging, and belonging creates home. Not permanent home. Not yet. But something close. Very close. By autumn, when the time comes to leave, the mood feels different. Nobody says goodbye forever. People speak of next spring, of next summer, of returning. The shelters are left standing where possible. Stone circles remain around old fire pits. Storage places are hidden carefully. Promises without words. The journey away feels shorter, because everyone knows the path back. And somewhere during the long walk south, while golden leaves drift through the wind and geese fly overhead, you realize something your ancestors never knew. Not every journey must lead somewhere new. Sometimes, the most important journeys are the ones that bring you back. And year after year, those returns will slowly weave invisible threads between memory and place. Until one day, people will stop calling them camps and begin calling them home. Section 12. The first time your people leave shelters behind, it feels almost careless. A little strange. A little, ugh. For generations, everything useful has traveled with the body. Stone blades, hides, baskets, stories, children. Especially children, which everyone agrees are difficult to pack neatly. But shelters are different. Shelters are built, used, repaired, and abandoned when the land no longer feeds you. Fire pits grow cold. Branch frames collapse beneath rain. Animal hides are untied and carried away. That is how wandering works. You take what you can. You leave the rest to weather. Yet beside the salt places, something new begins. At the end of one long summer, the old woman studies the camp carefully. The drying racks stand near the fires. Stone-lined pits sit beneath woven covers. Several shelters remain sturdy enough to survive autumn winds. She says they should not be destroyed. No one answers immediately. Leaving useful things behind feels risky. What if strangers take them? What if storms ruin them? What if animals move in and become extremely poor tenants? Still, the idea settles, because everyone expects to return. That expectation changes the meaning of everything. So the racks remain. The fire rings remain. The storage pits remain. And when your band walks away, the empty camp stays behind like a memory made of wood, stone, and ash. Months pass. Winter comes and goes. Snow covers the old shelters. Rain darkens the abandoned fire pits. Wind bends the branch frames, but does not erase them completely. The place waits. That is new. When your people return the following year, the sight feels almost impossible. There it is, not whole, not perfect, but present. The old fire circles still mark the ground. One storage pit remains dry beneath its cover. A drying rack leans dramatically to one side like an elder pretending not to nap. The children laugh. The adults do not. Not at first. Because something has changed. You have returned not to wilderness alone, but to traces of yourselves. That feeling is powerful. It reaches deeper than comfort. It says we were here, and we came back. The camp rises faster this time. Old shelters are repaired instead of rebuilt. New frames are added beside older ones. Stones are arranged more carefully around the fires. Storage pits are deepened and lined with flatter rocks. Each return improves the place. Each improvement encourages another return. A quiet circle begins. Historians still argue how seasonal camps became lasting settlements in different parts of the ancient world. Some point to rich fishing grounds, while others emphasize plants, animals trade, or mineral resources like salt. The truth is probably untidy. History usually is. Very few things begin for only one reason. Beside your salt lake, the reasons gather like people around a fire. There is salt. There are fish. There is water. There are familiar paths. There are memories. And now, there are structures that make returning easier. By midsummer, the camp feels larger than before. Another band arrives earlier than expected. They recognize the old fire pits and choose a nearby rise for their shelters. Soon, two groups become one large gathering. Not permanently. Not exactly. But longer than before. Smoke rises from many fires. Children run between shelters. Dogs, half wild and hopeful, linger near cooking places. The air smells of fish salt, warm reeds, and damp hides drying in the sun. It is noisy, peacefully noisy. That is a special kind of noise. The kind made by people who feel safe enough to be mildly annoying. Food preservation makes such gatherings possible. Fish caught in abundance do not vanish in 2 days. Meat from nearby hunts can be salted and dried for the journey home. Surplus food allows visitors to remain. Longer stays lead to deeper relationships. People exchange tools. They exchange stories. They exchange marriage partners, which is considerably more complicated than exchanging tools. Arguments happen. So do songs. The place grows socially important, not just useful. Useful places feed the body. Important places feed memory. One evening, while the sky glows purple beyond the dry lake, elders from several families sit together near the largest fire. They speak of next season, before this season has even ended. Where should new shelters stand? Which pit stayed driest? Should more racks be built near the eastern wind? These are quiet questions, but they are revolutionary. They treat the place as something continuing through time, not a stop, a center. Nearby, children listen without understanding the significance. To them, the salt camp has always existed. Their earliest memories include white flats shining beneath the sun and fish hanging above smoky fires. This is how traditions become invisible. They begin as decisions, then become habits, then become the world. As autumn returns, not everyone leaves at once. A few families remain longer to finish drying fish. An injured elder stays with relatives while others travel ahead. 2 young people choose to wait for another band arriving from the west. The camp does not empty completely. Not this time. For several weeks, smoke continues rising above the salt flats. A thin thread, a small sign. A place still alive. No one calls it a village. The word does not exist. But something village-like has begun. A place used repeatedly. A place remembered collectively. A place improved across seasons. A place where food work and relationships gather. When winter finally approaches, most people still leave. The old patterns remain strong. Herds must be followed. Other resources must be found. But the departure is different now. More things are left behind intentionally. Tools too heavy to carry. Flat stones for grinding salt. Poles for racks. A few carefully sealed bundles hidden for return. Trust has entered the landscape, and trust is one of the roots of settlement. As you walk away through golden grass, you glance back. Smoke no longer rises. The shelters stand silent beneath the pale sky. Yet they do not seem abandoned. They seem waiting. And somewhere deep within you, a feeling takes shape. Small, quiet, unmistakable. There are places you pass through, and there are places that begin holding part of you after you leave. Section 13. The salt camp changes most during the quiet workdays. Not during feasts, not during arrivals, not during stories beside the fire, but during ordinary mornings, when people wake beneath pale light and begin solving small problems with patient hands. The air smells of damp ash, fish scales, crushed reeds, and the sharp white tang of salt. Mist rises from the drying pools. Birds call from the marshes. Somewhere beyond the camp, deer move carefully through the grass. Everyone has work, and now the work is more organized than before. That may not sound dramatic, but drama is often overrated. A full stomach prefers organization. Near the main fires, the old drying racks have grown into something sturdier. Upright poles hold crossbeams of polished wood. Strips of fish hang in neat rows. Venison rests higher where smoke touches it gently, without burning it. Children are warned not to run beneath the racks. Children run beneath them anyway. Naturally, one little girl bumps her head on a hanging fish and declares the fish attacked first. The elders consider this unlikely. Still, justice is complicated. The racks teach important lessons. Meat placed too low becomes cooked instead of preserved. Fish hung too closely together remains damp. Food left in still air spoils faster than food touched by wind. So people adjust. They widen the racks. They raise the beams. They build smaller fires that smoke steadily instead of roaring brightly. The camp begins to understand that preservation is not one act. It is a system. Salt draws moisture. Smoke discourages insects. Wind dries surfaces. Shade prevents sudden spoilage. No one says it that way, but their hands learn the truth. Historians still debate how early humans developed dedicated smokehouses and storage pits. Some argue these structures emerged from seasonal abundance, especially fish runs. Others believe they grew alongside settled camps and repeated use of place. The evidence is scattered. Ash stains, post holes, old pits, tiny clues from lives too ordinary to leave monuments. Yet ordinary lives built the foundations of everything. Beside the salt flats, shelters begin to serve special purposes. One low hut is no longer used for sleeping. Its entrance faces away from heavy rain. Its roof is thick with reeds and hide-trapping smoke beneath the beams. Inside, fish hang in rows. The air is dark, warm, fragrant. Your eyes sting when you enter. Your throat tightens slightly. But the smell is comforting because it smells like future meals. Someone jokes that the hut belongs to the fish now. The fish, being poor conversationalists, raise no objections. This early smokehouse changes the camp's rhythm. Before, preservation happened wherever space allowed. Now, people bring food to a particular place. They check it at certain times. They assign responsibility. The old woman watches everything. She trusts very few people with the fish. This is understandable. Fish have betrayed her before. Nearby, another group improves the storage pits. At first, these were shallow holes lined with grass. Useful, yes, but imperfect. Rain seeped in. Mice found their way through gaps. Curious dogs dug at the edges with deeply unhelpful enthusiasm. So the pits become deeper. Flatter stones line the walls. Dry reeds cover the bottom. Hides wrap the bundles. Heavy rocks seal the top. The earth feels cool beneath your hands as you help dig. Damp soil presses under your fingernails. The smell is rich and dark, unlike the dry sharpness of the salt flats nearby. Food goes underground, not because people are hiding it from winter, because they are learning how to ask the earth for help. Cool ground protects dried meat from heat. Stone keeps away moisture. Sealed covers reduce pests. The improvements are simple, yet each one matters. Small successes gather, like salt crystals, one by one. Then suddenly enough, the social changes are just as important. Storage requires trust. Everyone must know which food belongs to whom. Everyone must agree when shared stores may be opened. Everyone must respect the work that happened before the meal. That is not easy. Humans love sharing. Humans also love keeping. Both instincts sit beside the same fire, pretending not to notice each other. So rules begin forming. Not written rules, remembered rules. Families mark storage pits with certain stones. Shared bundles are placed near the central fire. Food prepared by several families is counted aloud before being stored. Counting remains rough, but intention matters. The camp is not only preserving food now, it is preserving agreements. This changes how people speak. There are more discussions before action, more patience when hunger rises, more attention to fairness, because unfairness can poison a camp faster than spoiled fish. And spoiled fish works quickly. By late summer, the salt camp holds more food than anyone remembers seeing in one place. Rows of smoked fish darken beneath the rafters. Bundles of salted meat rest in lined pits. Crushed salt fills leather pouches and clay-lined baskets. Abundance has become visible. Not wild abundance, managed abundance. A new kind. At night, you sit beside the fire and listen to the camp breathing around you. Babies sleep in woven cradles. Adults murmur near the smokehouse. Dogs shift near warm ashes, dreaming of stolen scraps they absolutely deserved. The air tastes faintly salty. Your hands smell of smoke. Your shoulders ache from digging. And yet the ache feels good. It belongs to something lasting. The old hunter points toward the store pits and says, "Winter will have to work harder this year." Everyone laughs softly. No one laughs too loudly. Winter might hear. Still beneath the humor lives a real change. Your people no longer merely respond to the world. They prepare. They organize. They build structures that carry the memory of work forward. A rack remembers fish. A pit remembers hunger. A smokehouse remembers tomorrow. And tomorrow once again begins to feel less like an enemy. As the moon rises over the pale salt flats, you look across the growing camp. The shelters stand closer now. Paths form between them. Smoke rises from fixed places. Food rests beneath the earth. This is not yet a village, but it is no longer only a camp. It has weight. It has rhythm. It has stored time. And every salted fish hanging in the smoky dark seems to whisper the same quiet promise. Stay a little longer. Section 14. For many generations, movement has been the answer to nearly every problem. When food disappears, you walk. When rivers dry, you walk. When storms arrive, you walk. When memories become painful, you walk. Walking is what humans do. And for thousands upon thousands of years, wandering has kept your people alive. But something strange begins happening beside the salt springs. People stay. Not forever. Not all at once. Just a little longer each year. And sometimes history changes through little things. Spring arrives gently. Warm breezes sweep across the valleys. Birds fill the morning with songs. The smell of damp soil and fresh grass drifts across the camp as smoke rises from familiar fire pits. You know this place now. Everyone does. Children born years ago no longer ask where they are going when the journey begins. They ask when they will arrive. That difference matters, because destinations create expectations, and expectations create roots. By the time your people reach the springs, the old shelters still stand. Not perfectly. Winter winds have broken some branches. Rain has darkened the roofs. One smokehouse leans slightly, giving the impression that it spent the entire winter thinking about fish. Still it remains. So do the storage pits. So do the stone circles around the fires. The camp remembers, and memory welcomes you back. Repairs begin immediately. Nobody discusses where to build. Everyone already knows. One family prefers the eastern side, where morning sunlight arrives first. Another settles near the stream where children play among smooth stones. The old woman chooses her place beside the smokehouse. Naturally, the fish trust her, and she trusts no one. Some traditions require no explanation. Historians still debate where the first villages truly appeared and why. Fertile lands, rivers, climate, and farming all played important roles. Yet many scholars believe reliable resources encouraged repeated settlement long before fully agricultural societies emerged. Salt springs offered exactly that: predictability. And predictability feels wonderful, especially after thousands of years of uncertainty. This year, not everyone leaves when summer ends. An old hunter injured his leg and remains behind with his daughter. Another family stays to protect the stored fish. A young couple expecting a child decides not to risk the long journey south. At first, everyone worries. Can they survive? Will predators come? Will loneliness become unbearable? Yet when spring returns, smoke still rises above the camp. They succeeded. Not easily, but successfully. The sight amuses everyone, because for the first time in memory, the camp never truly disappeared. Someone was always there. A fire always burned. A remarkable thought. The children are especially delighted. They run toward familiar faces with joyful cries. Stories are exchanged. Gifts are shared. The camp feels less like a seasonal gathering and more like something else. Something larger. Something steady. The paths between shelters become visible now. Not imagined paths. Real ones. Bare earth marks the routes people walk each day. One trail leads to the springs, another to the smokehouses, another toward the river where fish are cleaned, and children inevitably become wet, despite endless warnings. Some lessons refuse to be learned. People begin arranging things deliberately. Waste is carried away from sleeping areas. Dry wood is stacked in certain places. New shelters stand closer together. The largest fire becomes a gathering place for evening meals and discussions. Without realizing it, your people are organizing space, and organized space creates community. The sounds change too. Morning brings voices before sunrise. Dogs bark at unfamiliar visitors. Stone tools knock rhythmically against one another. Children laugh. Fish sizzle over the fire. Smoke carries the scent of salt and wood across the valley. These sounds feel comforting. They sound like belonging. Visitors arrive from distant bands. Some stay for weeks. Some remain forever. People marry. Children are born. Old people die. And instead of carrying memories away, the village holds them. A tree becomes famous because someone proposed beneath it. A flat stone becomes important because 3 generations sharpened tools there. The old woman claims one particular fish rack is lucky. Nobody argues. Luck is easier to respect than to understand. One evening, as orange light settles across the salt flats, travelers arrive, carrying stories from far away. They speak of bitter springs beyond the mountains and lakes where white crystals cover the shore. The camp listens carefully, not with fear, with interest. Because knowledge now has somewhere to live. In wandering days, stories traveled constantly. Now stories return, and they accumulate. Like stored food, like memories, like people. Archaeologists thousands of years later will discover traces of places much like this. Post holes buried beneath earth, fire pits darkened by centuries, bones of fish and animals, tiny grains of salt hidden inside ancient soils. Small clues, enough to suggest lives once lived, enough to whisper that people stayed. Not because they conquered nature, because they learned to cooperate with it. Winter approaches again. Many families prepare to leave, but not all. More stay this year. Several shelters remain occupied. Smoke rises through cold mornings. Fish continue drying beneath the roof of the old smokehouse. The village breathes, slowly, quietly, continuously. And as you walk beside the springs one evening, listening to frogs calling beneath the fading light, you realize something your ancestors never knew. There are places that feed you. There are places that protect you. And there are places that remember you. The salt springs have become all 3. And around these humble waters, humanity has begun doing something extraordinary. Not wandering through the world, living in it. Together. Section 15. The village beside the springs survives another winter. Then another. Smoke rises through every season now, not from one fire, from many. The old paths remain visible beneath countless footsteps. Storage pits are deeper. Smokehouses stand stronger. Children who once chased each other beneath the drying racks have become parents themselves. And something else has changed. The animals no longer seem quite so distant. For most of your ancestors, animals were either prey or danger. Something to hunt, something to avoid, something to fear. But life beside the springs creates new possibilities. Because year after year, the same creatures keep returning. Always returning. The deer arrive in spring. Wild sheep gather during summer. Mountain goats descend from the hills. Even the great cattle of the grasslands pause near the mineral waters. They come for the same reason humans do. Salt. The old hunter notices it first, not because his eyes are sharper. Age rarely grants that kindness, but because he has spent more years watching than speaking, and watching teaches patience. He notices that certain animals linger near the village. They no longer flee immediately. Some have become familiar. One scarred doe has appeared every year for as long as anyone can remember. Children have named her. Naturally. Children insist on naming everything. They name dogs, trees, clouds, occasionally rocks. The old doe receives more names than she probably deserves, but she keeps returning, always returning. One summer morning, while mist rises above the springs and the smell of wet reeds fills the air, you see something unusual. A young wild goat approaches the edge of the camp. Not close, not foolishly close, but close enough. It sniffs the air, stares curiously, and begins licking a stone covered in salt residue left behind from the previous day's work. Nobody moves, nobody speaks. The animal remains, then quietly walks away. A small moment, yet everyone remembers. Historians still debate how animal domestication developed in different parts of the world. Some scholars believe hunting gradually transformed into management. Others suggest animals and humans slowly adapted to each other's presence around dependable resources. Perhaps no one planned it. Perhaps both sides simply grew accustomed to sharing space. The springs make that possible, because everyone needs salt. Humans, deer, goats, wild cattle, even birds. And where needs overlap, relationships begin. Autumn brings another surprise. A harsh storm scatters part of a herd of young sheep. Several become separated from the others. One injured lamb stumbles near the village. The children discover it first. Children and lost animals have always found each other. The lamb survives, not because anyone intends to tame it, not because anyone dreams of keeping flocks, simply because abandoning it feels cruel, and because children become remarkably persuasive when they have already named something. The old woman sighs. Experience has taught her that once children give names to animals, practical decisions become complicated. The lamb remains. Winter comes. The animal stays close to the fires. It eats scraps. It follows children. It grows. And when spring arrives, it shows no desire to leave. Curious, very curious. Soon other animals linger near the camp. Not many. Just enough. They know where water flows. They know where safety exists. And most importantly, they know where salt can be found. People begin leaving small piles of mineral-rich earth near the edges of the village. Not as traps, not as gifts, simply because animals seem calmer when it is there. And calmer animals are easier neighbors. One elderly man jokes that humans are not keeping sheep. The sheep are keeping humans. Perhaps there is truth in that. Civilization often emerges through strange partnerships. The seasons pass. Children who grew up beside the springs know animals differently than their grandparents did. They recognize individual goats. They understand which creatures become dangerous and which become curious. Observation deepens, patience grows, and little by little fear changes into familiarity. The greatest lesson comes during a difficult summer. Game becomes scarce, hunting grows unreliable, yet several animals living near the village remain. Not wild, not tame. Something between. Their presence softens the hardship. And suddenly, a new thought enters human minds. What if food does not always have to be chased? A strange thought. Almost unsettling. Your ancestors followed herds. But perhaps herds can follow people. Not through force, through trust, through water, through salt, through habit. Simple things. Historians believe salt played an important role in managing livestock. Even today, animals instinctively seek mineral sources, and herders often use salt to guide and maintain their flocks. But thousands of years ago, such knowledge grows slowly, through mistakes, through patience, through generations, one curious animal at a time. As years pass, piles of salt become common near the outskirts of the village. Sheep gather there peacefully. Goats return again and again. Children carry handfuls of crystals, with pride convinced they are personally responsible for all animal happiness. Adults wisely encourage this belief. Helpful children are treasures. The sounds of the village change. There are still dogs, still laughter, still crackling fires. But now another sound joins them. Bleating. Soft and constant. The sound of animals lingering near human homes. The sound of wildness becoming familiar. The smell changes too. Smoke, fish, salt, wet earth, animal fur, warm milk. The scents mix together beneath the evening sky. And as you sit beside the springs one summer night, watching sheep rest beneath the stars, you realize that something extraordinary is happening once again. The salt that taught humans how to preserve food is now teaching animals how to stay. And if animals stay, perhaps people will stay even longer, because the village no longer depends only on memories, or fish, or hunting. Now, life itself begins gathering around the springs, not wandering away, gathering, patiently, like countless creatures before, following the same ancient invitation hidden inside the earth, the invitation that first brought deer, then humans, and now perhaps the beginnings of herds. Section 16. By now the village no longer surprises you with its existence. It surprises you with its needs. There are more mouths, more fires, more children, more dogs, more arguments about fish, and naturally more reasons for everyone to insist that their own storage pit is somehow superior to every other storage pit. Humans remain wonderfully confident creatures, especially about holes in the ground. As the seasons pass, one problem becomes increasingly obvious. The dry lakes do not always cooperate. Some summers bring brilliant white patches stretching across the earth. Other years, heavy rains arrive too often. Water remains trapped in the shallow basins, and the crystals form slowly. Sometimes not enough. Not enough for the fish, not enough for the meat, not enough for the growing herds, not enough for the village. That thought feels dangerous. For many years, nature has provided. Now, nature seems uncertain again, and uncertainty always attracts curious minds. One summer, while cleaning fish beside the springs, the old woman's granddaughter notices something strange. A shallow pool left in the sun after several hot days develops tiny white lines around its edges. Not unusual. Everyone has seen such things. But this time, she fills a small shell with the bitter water and leaves it beside the fire. By accident. Or perhaps because she becomes distracted listening to a story. Humans have made many discoveries because someone forgot something. Fortunately, hours later, she remembers the shell. The water is gone, and inside remain tiny white crystals, very tiny, but unmistakable. Salt. She laughs softly, then tries again, and again. This time she uses a larger stone bowl, more water, more waiting, more heat, more crystals. Interesting. Very interesting. The old woman watches carefully. Her eyes brighten. Not with surprise, with recognition. Nature has been teaching all along. The dry lakes do this. The summer sun does this. Perhaps humans can help. Soon everyone becomes curious. Children bring shells. Men carry stone bowls. Women collect water directly from the springs. Experiments begin. Most fail, naturally. Too much heat burns the containers. Too little heat leaves only muddy water. One particularly enthusiastic young man accidentally cracks 3 stone bowls and receives several hours of helpful advice from his mother. helpful advice delivered loudly. Learning often arrives with embarrassment, but eventually patterns emerge. Wide containers work best. Gentle heat helps. Patience helps even more. Day after day, white crystals appear. Not gifts discovered, gifts made. A remarkable difference. Historians still debate exactly when humans first began deliberately producing salt rather than merely collecting it. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of ancient brine boiling in several regions, but the beginnings remain hidden behind thousands of forgotten generations. Perhaps no single person invented salt making. Perhaps villages everywhere simply reached the same conclusion. When nature becomes unreliable, humans become inventive. Autumn arrives with cool winds and the scent of drying reeds. Smoke rises from dozens of fires. Near the edge of the village, a new area appears. Not for sleeping, not for cooking, for making salt. People carry brine from the springs. Containers sit beside carefully tended fires. Steam rises into the air. Children watch with endless fascination. They are convinced boiling water is magical. Perhaps it is. The process demands patience. Hours pass. Water disappears. White crystals remain. The sight never grows old. Women laugh. Men smile proudly. Children cheer over tiny piles of salt, as though mountains have been created. Even the old hunter seems impressed, which is saying something. He once declared clouds uninteresting. No one understood how. As years pass, certain people become especially skilled. They understand the springs. They know which seasons produce stronger water. They know how much heat is needed and when to stop before the precious crystals are ruined. Without realizing it, specialists appear. Not hunters, not gatherers. Salt makers. A new kind of work. And new work changes communities. People exchange labor. One family fishes. Another prepares hides. Another tends animals. And a few spend countless hours making the white crystals that everyone now depends upon. Knowledge itself becomes valuable. Secrets pass from grandparents to grandchildren. Not written. Remembered. Protected. Some springs become favored over others. The village speaks of them with affection. Certain pools are considered stronger. Some are believed to bring luck. Others are blamed for spoiled fish and unpleasant weather. Humans enjoy assigning personalities to water, perhaps because water refuses to defend itself. Trade begins quietly. Travelers arriving from distant valleys notice the growing piles of salt. They stare in amazement. One man exchanges beautiful obsidian blades for several leather bags filled with crystals. Another offers amber beads. Another brings stories. Stories are always welcome, especially during winter. And gradually the people of the village begin to understand something. They no longer simply possess salt. They create it. Not perfectly, not endlessly, but reliably. And reliability is powerful. The springs no longer determine everything. The weather no longer decides everything. Human hands now participate. That changes the way people see themselves. No longer merely followers of nature, partners with it. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the hills and frogs sing beside the marshes, you walk through the village. Smoke rises from fish racks. Children chase dogs through narrow paths. Sheep rest beside shelters. And near the springs, fires glow beneath stone bowls, where water slowly disappears into steam, leaving behind only white crystals. Simple, ordinary, beautiful. The smell of salt and wood smoke hangs in the cooling air, and you realize that something extraordinary has happened. Long ago, humans followed animals to find salt. Then they gathered what nature left behind. Then they discovered its power. And now, for the first time, they have learned to make more. Not treasure, not gold, not weapons, but time itself. Because every crystal born from those steaming bowls means another fish preserved, another winter endured, another child fed, another reason to remain beside the springs. And somewhere beyond the horizon, other villages are beginning to notice. Because people have always traveled toward places where life becomes easier. And your village, built upon humble white crystals, is quietly becoming one of those places. Section 17. By now, the paths leading to the springs no longer belong to animals alone. Human feet have claimed them, not with walls, not with markers, but with repetition. For generations, deer created these trails while searching for the white earth hidden beneath stone and shallow water. Then, your ancestors followed the deer, and now countless people follow one another. Back and forth, season after season. The earth remembers. You can see it clearly. Grass no longer grows where so many feet have passed. Stones are worn smooth. Fallen trees are cleared away. Streams have favorite crossing places known to everyone. Nobody planned these roads. Roads rarely ask permission. They simply appear when enough people want the same thing. And many people want salt. The village beside the springs grows busier with each passing year. Smoke rises from dozens of houses. Dogs bark at unfamiliar scents. Children chase one another between drying racks, while sheep wander with the confidence of creatures convinced they own everything. Perhaps they do. The smell of salt and fish fills the air. Visitors arrive constantly now. Some come from neighboring valleys. Others travel for many days. Their accents sound different. Their clothing uses unfamiliar hides. Their stories speak of distant mountains, endless rivers, and forests so dense that sunlight struggles to reach the ground. Everyone brings something: obsidian blades, amber beads, beautiful shells, animal skins, medicinal herbs, and in return they ask for the same thing: salt. Always salt. Historians still debate exactly when trade routes became permanent networks. Some scholars emphasize agriculture and population growth. Others believe specialized resources, such as flint, copper, and salt, helped create the earliest long-distance exchanges. Perhaps they all worked together. Human history enjoys partnerships. One autumn morning, a group of strangers arrives carrying stone unlike anything you have ever seen. Green stone, smooth and beautiful. They traveled many days to reach the springs. They know the road well, because their fathers walked it, and their grandfathers before them. One old traveler laughs while pointing toward the path behind him. He says the road itself knows where to go. Everyone smiles, because perhaps he is right. Paths have memories too. Trade becomes more organized with each generation. Certain families specialize in preparing salt. Others focus on fish. Some raise sheep. Others create tools or pottery. People exchange not only objects, they exchange skills, knowledge, songs, stories, even marriages. Love, after all, travels surprisingly well, and occasionally causes trouble equally well. One summer, a young man from a distant valley falls hopelessly in love with a girl from the springs. His family arrives carrying gifts, furs, and enough enthusiasm to frighten everyone. The marriage joins two communities, and suddenly the road between them matters more than ever. Children born years later belong to both places. Family itself stretches across the landscape. Roads do not merely carry goods. They carry people. Memories. Promises. As trade grows, travelers begin resting along familiar routes. Small camps appear beside rivers. Hunters share news with strangers. Dangerous crossings become known and avoided. Everyone benefits. Because roads create trust, not perfect trust. Humans remain humans. Arguments happen. Disagreements happen. Someone inevitably claims his fish deserved more salt than anyone else's. Such matters feel terribly important at the time. Yet the roads survive, and they continue bringing life. The old hunter no longer travels. His knees complain loudly whenever he stands. Instead, he sits beside the fire and listens to stories brought by others. His favorite game is guessing where travelers come from simply by looking at their shoes. He is surprisingly accurate. Years of observation sharpen strange talents. One evening, visitors describe another village beside distant bitter springs. Another people have learned to make salt too. Some villagers worry. Will they take our traders? Will they become rivals? The old woman laughs softly. There are many hungry mouths in the world, she says. A few more springs will not empty them. Wisdom speaks simply, and she is right. Salt is not treasure because it is rare. It is treasure because everyone needs it. The roads become busier, not crowded, but alive. You hear news from lands beyond imagination, stories of giant rivers, strange animals, forests without end, mountains where snow never melts. The world grows larger, and yet, strangely, home grows stronger. Because every traveler eventually asks the same question: how far until the springs? The answer brings smiles, because everyone knows, everyone remembers. Archaeologists thousands of years from now will uncover beads, stones, shells, and tools carried across astonishing distances. They will marvel at how connected ancient communities truly were, and beneath many of those discoveries, quietly hidden, lies salt. Not visible, not glamorous, just essential, like roots beneath trees. As winter approaches, another caravan arrives. The strangers are tired, cold, hungry. They unwrap beautiful blue stones in exchange for fish and salt. That evening, everyone eats together beneath the stars. Different languages, different memories, different songs. Yet the same meal, and the same white crystals flavor every bite. You sit beside the fire watching smoke drift upward into the darkness. Around you, strangers laugh like old friends. Dogs sleep near the warmth. Children dream beneath hides. And suddenly, you realize something remarkable. Long ago, animals created the first roads. Humans followed. Then, salt transformed those paths into lifelines, into friendships, into families, into worlds connected by trust. Roads of white gold, not paved with stone, paved with need. And perhaps need shared by everyone is one of the oldest foundations of civilization. Section 18. The paths that once belonged only to deer have become roads for people, not roads of stone. Not yet. Just narrow lines worn into the earth by countless footsteps. Year after year, season after season, travelers arrive from valleys you have never seen. Some bring obsidian, sharper than ice. Others carry shells from distant seas. A few arrive with stories so strange that even the children stop interrupting. Almost, and nearly all of them ask the same question. How much salt do you have? Not because they are hungry, because everyone is. Because everyone has discovered what salt can do. The white crystals preserve fish. They protect meat. They sustain herds. They improve meals. And now they connect worlds. The village beside the springs has changed. Again, smoke rises from more houses than ever before. Storage pits stretch farther into the earth. Sheep and goats crowd the nearby hills. Dogs bark at strangers with the confidence of creatures who have forgotten they once begged for scraps. Life feels busy, prosperous, full, and prosperity has its own smell. Wood smoke, animal hides, fresh clay, drying fish, and always the faint, sharp scent of salt hanging in the air. People from distant places no longer arrive only during summer gatherings. They come throughout the year. Some remain for days. Some remain forever. And with every visitor, the village grows. Not simply in size, in importance. The old hunter has long since grown too stiff for long journeys. He spends his mornings sitting beside the main fire, pretending he is watching the children. Everyone knows he is listening to travelers. Age changes many things. Curiosity rarely disappears. One afternoon, strangers arrive carrying smooth green stones, unlike anything your people possess. In exchange, they ask only for bags of salt and several bundles of smoked fish. No one hesitates. The exchange feels fair, wonderful even. And that evening, everyone admires the beautiful stones, while eating fish preserved by the same crystals that brought the strangers there. Simple, elegant, human. Historians still debate when wealth first emerged in early settlements. Some scholars point to agriculture. Others emphasize trade networks and specialized resources. Salt-producing communities appear again and again in the ancient record. Perhaps that is no accident, because wealth begins with having something others need, and everyone needs salt. As years pass, certain families become known for their skill. One family produces the finest crystals, another raises the healthiest sheep, a third creates storage pits so dry and secure that travelers openly envy them. Success attracts attention, and attention attracts people. More shelters appear, then more. Some are occupied by relatives from distant valleys. Others belong to travelers who never intended to stay. But they stayed, because life near the springs feels easier, predictable, safe. There is food, there is water, there is trade, there are memories, and increasingly, there is opportunity. A curious thing. Opportunity. Your ancestors rarely thought about such matters. They thought about surviving the week. Now people think about next year, and perhaps the year after that. The children born in the village cannot imagine endless wandering. To them, the springs have always existed. The smokehouses have always stood beside the water. Travelers have always appeared with strange accents and stranger stories. This is simply the world. They do not know how extraordinary that is. The old woman who first salted the venison watches these changes with quiet amusement. Her hair is white now. Her hands tremble slightly, but her mind remains sharp. She laughs whenever people speak proudly about wealth. "Eat stones, then," she jokes. No one does, thankfully, because wealth means nothing if people forget what it serves, and what it serves is life. One harsh winter proves her wisdom. Snow falls early, herds vanish, nearby villages struggle. But your people open the storage pits. They share dried fish. They trade salt for furs and tools. Travelers arrive desperate and leave hopeful. The village survives, not because it has treasures, because it has preparation. Preparation wears many faces. Sometimes it wears smoke. Sometimes it wears salt. Sometimes it wears kindness. The years continue, and with them, new customs appear. Visitors offer gifts to the springs before collecting brine. Weddings bring together families from distant lands. Children play games, pretending to be twatters traveling the salt roads. One little boy insists he is the greatest trader in history. His mother points out that he has traded away all his food and returned with 3 pretty rocks. He calls this success. Optimism has always been a human strength. As prosperity grows, so does responsibility. Someone must organize the springs. Someone must settle disagreements. Someone must decide which storage pits belong to whom and how much salt should be exchanged. Without intending it, leaders emerge. Not kings, not rulers. Simply, trusted people. People whose words carry weight. Because weight now exists. Not the weight of gold, the weight of abundance, the weight of community, the weight of being important. Archaeologists thousands of years later will uncover places much like this. They will find bones of animals, broken pottery, ancient hearths, and traces of salt production. And they will wonder, why here? Why did people gather in this place? Why did they stay? The answer will not lie in palaces, or armies, or monuments. It will lie in something smaller, something white, something humble, something that taught humanity how to save tomorrow. One evening, you stand beside the springs as the setting sun paints the water gold. Children laugh among the houses. Smoke rises peacefully into the sky. Traders prepare for tomorrow's journey. Sheep settle for the night. The village hums with life. And you realize that wealth has arrived. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly, one handful of salt at a time. Because the greatest riches are not always shiny. Sometimes they smell of fish. Sometimes they hide beneath the earth. And sometimes they wait beside forgotten springs, patiently teaching humanity how to stay together. Section 19 by now. Generations have come and gone beside the springs. The old hunter rests beneath stones overlooking the valley. The old woman who first noticed the strange venison lives only in stories told beside evening fires. Children who once played among the drying racks have become grandparents themselves. Yet the smoke still rises, the springs still flow, and the white crystals still appear. Some things endure because they matter. The village no longer feels like the edge of the world. It feels like the center of many worlds. Travelers arrive from distant valleys. Roads stretch outward like rivers of memory. Herds graze nearby. Fish dry above the smokehouses. Storage pits remain full enough to quiet fear. And with abundance comes something new. Power. Not the power of strong arms. Not the power of sharp spears. The power to decide. Who receives salt? Who stores food? Who settles arguments? Who speaks when disputes arise? These questions become more important as the village grows. Because larger communities require trust, and trust often gathers around certain people. The wisest elders, the best negotiators, the families remembered for fairness. Not kings, not yet, but something approaching leadership. One elderly woman becomes famous for settling disagreements. People travel from neighboring settlements seeking her judgment. She speaks slowly, listens carefully, and has the useful habit of frightening foolish people with silence. Silence is an underrated skill. Her decisions become respected, and respect becomes authority. Authority, like smoke, rises gradually. Historians still debate how leadership emerged in early communities. Some scholars emphasize wealth. Others point toward religion-family connections, or the management of resources. Salt likely played a role, because whoever protects food protects life, and people remember those who protect life. As years pass, ceremonies appear. Nothing complicated, nothing grand. Simple rituals. Before collecting salt, some families leave flowers near the springs. Others pour a little fresh water into the pools as a sign of gratitude. Hunters returning safely offer the first fish to the communal fire before taking any home. Not because anyone commands them, because gratitude feels appropriate. Humans have always thanked the things they depend upon. Sometimes correctly, sometimes rather creatively. One old shepherd insists that singing to the springs ensures healthy sheep. His singing remains dreadful. The sheep appear unconcerned. Still, no one stops him. Traditions are difficult companions, and often harmless. Children learn stories explaining the white earth. Some say giant birds carried the crystals from ancient seas. Others believe the moon hides pieces of itself beneath the ground. Nobody takes these tales too seriously, yet everyone loves hearing them. Stories nourish memory. Memory nourishes identity. Identity nourishes community. And communities grow stronger when people share the same myths. Travelers bring stranger customs. One group touches salt before making promises. Another exchanges small bags of crystals during marriages. Some believe spilling salt invites bad fortune. Perhaps. Or perhaps spilled salt simply annoys everyone because gathering it requires hard work. Practical wisdom often disguises itself as superstition. The village changes physically as well. The central fire becomes a place for meetings. Special storehouses are reserved for communal supplies. Certain families oversee the springs themselves, ensuring no one damages them through greed or carelessness. Because greed appears. Naturally, abundance attracts greed the way fish attract dogs. One difficult summer brings little rain. The springs weaken. Salt production slows. Arguments begin. Voices rise. Families worry. Travelers arrive expecting trade. The village feels tense. Then the elders gather. Long discussions continue through the night. Smoke drifts upward, while frogs sing beside the marshes. At dawn, agreements are reached. Salt will be shared. Fish stores will be opened. No family will stand alone. The decision prevents disaster. And everyone remembers. Leadership proves itself not during easy years, during difficult ones. Archaeologists thousands of years later will find evidence of central storage areas and organized production in many ancient communities. Scholars still argue how power developed and who controlled valuable resources. Yet one truth remains: resources create responsibility, and responsibility creates leaders. By now, visitors speak of the springs with reverence. Stories travel farther than goods. People describe the village as though it possesses magic. But you know better. There is no magic, only patience, observation, cooperation, and countless generations refusing to surrender. One evening during the great gathering before winter, fires fill the valley with golden light. Families from distant roads share meals together. Traders exchange stories. Children dance. Dogs bark at shadows they never intend to chase. The smell is wonderful. Smoke, fish, sheep, fresh bread made from new grains, and always salt. The old songs rise into the night, songs remembered for generations, songs older than anyone alive. And as you sit beside the springs, watching stars appear above the dark sky, you understand something extraordinary. Long ago, your ancestors followed deer to strange rocks. They tasted the white earth without understanding. They discovered its power by accident. And from that simple beginning came food villages. Roads, trade leaders' rituals, and communities large enough to remember themselves. Not because salt created civilization alone. History is never so simple. But because one humble crystal taught humanity something precious. How to save tomorrow. And perhaps every civilization begins with that lesson. Not power, not wealth, not kings. Tomorrow. Section 20. The springs continue flowing, long after the old hunter is gone, long after the old woman, who first rubbed white crystals onto venison, becomes only a memory carried by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, long after the first smokehouses collapse and are rebuilt by hands that never knew who built them before. Life continues, because life always does. Generations pass quietly. Children become parents. Parents become stories. Stories become traditions. And traditions become invisible. People no longer speak about the discovery itself. Salt has become ordinary. And perhaps that is the greatest compliment humans can offer. We turn miracles into routines. The village beside the springs grows. New houses appear. New paths form. Animals become herds. Fields begin spreading beyond the familiar hills. Travelers arrive and leave. Babies cry. Old people laugh. Dogs sleep in warm patches of sunlight, exactly as dogs have always done. The world changes. But some things remain. Every morning, smoke rises into the sky. Fish still hang from drying racks. Storage pits still protect tomorrow, and somewhere children still sneak pieces of dried meat when they think nobody is watching. Nobody stops them. Not really, because every elder remembers doing exactly the same thing. Historians still debate many details. They argue over dates. They argue over places. They argue over which settlements appeared first and why. Scholars may never agree completely. History enjoys keeping some of its mysteries. Yet one truth remains difficult to ignore. Civilization did not appear all at once. It arrived slowly, through thousands of ordinary decisions, through forgotten hands, through quiet experiments, through patient observation, through countless people who never imagined history would remember them. And beneath many of those decisions lay something humble. Something white. Something so common in your world today that you barely notice it. Salt. Not gold. Not bronze. Not kings. Salt. Because before great cities, people needed preserved food. Before preserved food, people needed salt. And before kingdoms, people needed somewhere to return to. Somewhere familiar. Somewhere reliable. Somewhere that remembered them. Home. And home, in many ways, began beside the springs, not because salt alone built civilization, but because salt changed the relationship between humans and time. The hunt no longer ended with the setting sun. Summer no longer vanished when winter arrived. Food could wait. People could stay. Memories could accumulate. Villages could grow. Roads could connect strangers. And strangers could become neighbors. Perhaps that is the true miracle, not the crystals themselves, but what people did together after discovering them. Tonight, if you were to walk through that ancient village, you would hear sounds that still exist today. The crackle of firewood, the laughter of children, the soft bleating of sheep, the quiet conversations of tired people preparing tomorrow's meal. Nothing grand, nothing legendary, just life, simple life. And maybe that is enough, because history is not only emperors and monuments. It is smoke rising before sunrise. It is hands preserving fish for winter. It is families returning to familiar paths. It is people choosing again and again to stay together. And perhaps that choice built more than houses. Perhaps it built humanity itself. The night grows quieter now. The fires burn lower. The stars above the springs shine softly against the darkness. The air smells faintly of smoke and distant water. A gentle breeze moves through the reeds. Somewhere hidden among the sounds of sleeping animals and dying embers, frogs sing beside the marsh. The village rests, and so do you. There is no urgency here, no hunger pressing at the edges of tomorrow. Only warmth, only familiar voices fading into dreams, only the comforting knowledge that food waits beneath the earth and beside the fire. Safe, protected, saved by countless careful hands, saved by memory, saved by patience, saved by tiny white crystals gathered long ago. You sit beside the fire one last time. The flames dance quietly. Children sleep beneath soft hides. Dogs dream beside the ashes. The springs whisper their endless song. And above you, the stars shine exactly as they did when the deer first discovered these waters long before humans arrived, long before villages, long before roads, long before stories. And somehow through all those ages, the earth waited patiently, waiting for curious people, waiting for questions, waiting for someone to notice what the animals already knew. And because they did, tomorrow became possible. The fire grows softer, the voices disappear, the night becomes still, and surrounded by the gentle sounds of an ancient home built one handful of salt at a time, you allow your thoughts to drift peacefully into the darkness. End of script. Sleep well.